The Wealth Index is a measure of the UK's prosperity, and it has fallen to its lowest level in a decade. It's not much better for the health or happiness indices either. Hi everyone, I'm Martin Bamford, and today I'm going to talk about how we can start to reverse this downward trend in the Wealth Index before it gets worse. We're well aware that there are lots of problems in the world right now, but if we take positive action, then anything's possible. How is your health, wealth, and happiness affected by the events of the past year? According to new research, the UK's health, wealth and happiness fell to their lowest level in a decade at the onset of the pandemic in 2020. The latest LifeSearch Health, Wealth and Happiness Index, compiled in conjunction with the Centre for Economics and Business Research, looked at the changes in the three measures individually and combined. As the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic was felt in our wallets and bank balances, there was a significant decline in the Wealth Index in 2020. This index fell to 79.5 points in the second quarter of last year, before falling again to 76.3 in the third quarter. While still not as low as the levels we experienced back in 2011, when the index fell to 66.4 following the European sovereign debt crisis and its impact on global stock markets, it remains a significant decline in this measure of wealth. While the government has managed to keep levels of unemployment low through its furlough scheme, a sharp decline in wage growth placed downward pressure on the Wealth Index. However, the household savings ratio reached a new record high of 25.9% in the second quarter. That was due to restrictions on spending money, and a strong performance also from the stock market and house prices helped to soften falls in the Wealth Index. The Wealth Index recovered to 83.6 in the first quarter of this year, thanks to more robust earnings growth and also rising asset prices. At a more granular level, the research also found that the impact of the pandemic on household finances is very much divided across the country. 29% of British households feel better off financially than they did before the pandemic, but 24% feel worse off. The pandemic has prompted people to reevaluate their financial situation, with 56% of those surveyed saying that they took a closer look at their household finances due to the pandemic. 24% of Brits have saved more money, 21% have reviewed their spending more closely, and 9% have paid off debts. Only 5% of those surveyed said that they have reviewed their home or motor insurance policies during the pandemic, and 4% have taken out life assurance policies. Emma Walker, Chief Marketing Officer at LifeSearch, who commissioned this study, said, "In living memory, matters relating to our nation's health, wealth and happiness haven't felt so loaded or emotive. We created a new index to document this period and lock the UK's health, wealth and happiness trends into history. The result is a major new addition to the socio-economic conversation that will be tracked long into the future." While the Wealth Index experienced steep falls in the last year, it hasn't yet reached a record low, but we may still have that yet to come in the months ahead, and this is reflected in the fears that consumers shared with us, from job insecurity through to rising bills and savings taking a hit. Turning to our collective health, the pandemic was a national health crisis. The Health Index stood at 74.7 in 2020, its lowest level in the past decade. This index experienced its most significant year-on-year decline in the second quarter of last year, falling by 49% as COVID-19 took its toll. A key driver for this decline in the health index was the death rate, but some aspects of our health actually experienced a moderate improvement last year. For example, sick leave, it fell during most of last year, and the number of GP appointments were down by 31% at the height of the pandemic, while A&E admissions were down by 57% on an annual basis. The study found that 29% of Brits feel less healthy now than they did before starting the pandemic, but 25% feel healthier than they did before. 36% of those surveyed said they have been comfort eating more in the past year. I can identify with that one. And 21% have consumed more alcohol. However, with the closure of pubs and bars, 27% said that they have drunk less. 34% of Brits feel they are less fit now than they were pre-COVID, but 25% feel fitter. On our mental health, the research found that 39% of adults say this has declined, with only 14% claiming their mental health has improved. A key driver behind mental health for many is work-life balance. The study found that 57% of Brits have worked from home at some point in the past year, creating additional time for entertainment and leisure, an average of 44 minutes a day more free time. The study also found that more adults now believe their work-life balance is improved, at 63% in 2021, compared with 59% in 2019. 2019. Nina Skiro, chief executive at CBR, said, "When thinking about the past year, health, wealth and happiness are not the first words that come to mind for most. Yet there is reason for optimism looking forward. Given the continuing vaccine rollouts and roadmap for easing restrictions, CBR anticipates a return to economic growth with quarterly GDP expansion of 4.5% and 4.2% expected for Q2 and Q3 respectively. The combination of these factors is set to drive improvements in health, wealth and happiness. Nevertheless, there remain considerable downside risks. One of the more significant near-term developments will be the upcoming tapering of the furlough scheme, which is set to be fully withdrawn at the end of September. CBR expects this to be accompanied by an uptick in redundancies, resulting in a peak unemployment rate of 6.5% in the final quarter of 2021, and thus putting some pressure on individuals' livelihoods. On happiness, the index experienced significant falls in 2020, with the year characterized by uncertainty and restrictions. The happiness index fell by 9.5% in the second quarter of 2020 and reached a record low of 84.8, falling to a lower level than seen following the UK's vote to leave the European Union. In the first quarter of this year, the happiness index had fallen to a new record low of 76.4. Almost half of UK adults reported being less happy than they were a year earlier. Drivers of happiness include spending time with friends and family, travelling and having the freedom to go wherever they want. Emma Walker concluded, with the backdrop of lockdown easing and the vaccine rollout ramping up across all adults, we are hopeful that we may see an uptick across the index in the next quarter. At a granular level, we know from our study that consumers are still concerned about their finances this year. Now more than ever, it is vital for consumers to protect themselves and their families from any financial shocks such as a loss of income from sickness, injury or death, to give them added peace of mind and security. So, what positive steps can we take to address this decline in measures of wealth, health and happiness? I'm a big believer in an internal locus of control. Locus of control is the degree to which people believe that they, as opposed to external forces, have control over an outcome of the events in their lives. Yes, of course, the stuff going on in the world influences our experiences, but we often have much more control over what happens to us than we choose to believe. On wealth, there are some simple steps we can take to improve our individual scores. One is to feel more in control of our money, which means reviewing our budget and our expenditure, knowing what comes in and goes out of our bank account each month. It means having a cash emergency fund as a buffer in case of a rainy day, so external circumstances have less of an immediate financial impact on our lives. It means avoiding the financial news. The daily movements of the stock market index, like the FTSE 100, are almost irrelevant to your long-term financial security. Even less relevant is what happens to Bitcoin or Dogecoin. Just turn it off. On health, and I'm not a health practitioner, what an opportunity as we emerge from this pandemic to re-enter the world in a healthier and fitter state than we were before. In the past week, I've taken up kayaking again after a 2-year break, and I'm training very hard to restore my fitness with a goal of taking part in a long-distance kayak marathon next Easter. Movement is so important to our health and well-being, and being outdoors, out in nature, it does wonders for our mental health too. Being in nature is an important driver of happiness as well. I've become a little bit obsessed recently with a concept known as biophilic design, integrating elements like wood, natural lighting, plants and even water into our lives. Several studies have observed and confirmed that biophilic design can foster happiness and well-being. If you can't bring nature into your home, head out into nature. My happy places are walking in the forest or spending time on or even in water, kayaking or wild swimming. Does your personal experience of wealth, health and happiness in the past year reflect these findings in the latest LifeSearch Health, Wealth and Happiness Index? Do let me know in the comments below and start a conversation. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for watching this video. Until next time, I'm Martin Bamford, and remember, when it comes to your money, the more you know, the faster it can grow.